Some betrayals don't come with shouting. They come with silence, the kind that sits beside you at dinner and pretends to be love. That's how it started for me, with silence. The kind that creeps into your home and wraps itself around every room until even laughter sounds like an echo of what it used to be. My name is Claire. For 13 years, I thought I was living the kind of marriage most women would envy, a comfortable house, a kind husband, a gentle rhythm to our lives. Daniel was a steady man, or at least, that's what I told myself. He liked his coffee black, his shirts ironed, and his weekends quiet. He kissed my forehead every morning before work and sent me texts like, "Don't wait up too late, love." You know, the small things that make you feel safe. Our mornings used to start the same way. Me in the kitchen, barefoot, making breakfast, him sitting by the counter, reading the news. I'd hum softly while frying eggs, and he'd joke that my singing was the reason the sun rose. But one morning, I realized something had changed. The eggs were still sizzling, the toast still burning at the edges, but Daniel wasn't there. His chair sat empty. His coffee mug was clean. The paper, untouched. I checked the clock. 7:42 a.m. He'd already left. It wasn't like him. He never skipped breakfast. Never left without saying goodbye. Still, I told myself, maybe he's just in a rush. We all have those mornings. I rinsed the pan and moved on with my day. But when those small changes start adding up, you start to notice the weight of them. That evening, he came home late. His tie was loosened, his eyes tired, and when I greeted him at the door with my usual smile, he didn't quite meet my gaze. "Rough day?" I asked gently, reaching for his coat. "Yeah." "Long meeting ran over," he said, rubbing his neck. There was something different in his voice, not tiredness, but distraction. Like his mind was somewhere else entirely. I wanted to ask more, but something stopped me. Maybe fear, maybe pride, or maybe deep down I already knew. Instead, I just nodded, forcing a smile. "Dinner's ready." He smiled back, a quick, polite smile that didn't reach his eyes, and walked past me. And that's when I noticed it, the faint trace of perfume. Not mine, not ours. It was sweet, expensive, and unfamiliar. The kind of scent that lingers too long in your head. For the next few weeks, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Marriage, after all, isn't made of perfection. It's made of forgiveness, patience, and 1,000 small excuses we give the people we love. He started working late more often. He started locking his phone. He laughed at messages I couldn't see. And I told myself, "Claire, don't be paranoid. He's probably just stressed. The company's been busy. Maybe he's tired." But then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday, one of those soft evenings in spring when the air smells like rain and fresh cut grass. I'd cooked his favorite, roast chicken with rosemary and lemon. He texted earlier, saying, "Be home by 8. 8 came, then 9. By 10:30, the chicken had gone cold. When I finally heard his key turn in the door, I felt relief flood through me, until I saw him. His shirt was wrinkled, his hair messy, and that perfume, her perfume, clung to him again. He tried to smile. "Sorry, dinner with clients ran long." I didn't ask questions this time. I just looked at him and said softly, "You should shower. I'll reheat the food." He nodded almost too quickly. Yeah, thanks." And as he walked toward the bathroom, I felt my heart start to harden, not from anger, but from clarity. Because when you love someone, you learn their every detail, and that night, I realized I didn't recognize the man I'd built my life around. 4 days after, I went through the motions, making breakfast, folding laundry, pretending not to see the distance growing between us. But every quiet dinner, every unanswered text, every late meeting carved a deeper hollow inside me. I started keeping notes, little things I noticed. Dates, times, small inconsistencies. Not because I wanted to catch him, but because I wanted to understand when I lost him. There's something deeply painful about suspecting the truth, yet praying to be wrong. You start to bargain with the universe. Maybe it's a phase. Maybe he's just unhappy. Maybe I can fix it. But betrayal doesn't need proof to hurt. It just needs doubt. And by the time I decided to know for sure, I was already grieving the marriage I used to have. That's when I found her. Or rather them. It was a Wednesday morning when his phone buzzed on the counter while he showered. A message popped up, glowing innocently on the screen. Last night was perfect. Can't wait to see you again, my love. The name attached was Catherine Work. My hands trembled, but I didn't open it. I didn't have to. I just stared at those words until they blurred. Perfect. Love. Again. And in that moment, something inside me went quiet, not broken, just still. Like a storm that finally settles. When he came out of the shower, I was sitting by the table, his phone in front of me. Daniel, I said softly. Who's Catherine? His eyes flicked to the phone, just for a second. But that second was all I needed. He froze, then smiled, too quickly. She's from work. We're handling a new account. Oh, I said, nodding slowly. And does she usually text you, my love, about new accounts? The color drained from his face. It's not, Claire, it's not what you think. But it always is, isn't it? I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there, watching him stutter and search for words, and realized I didn't need to hear his excuses. Because sometimes, the worst betrayal isn't the act itself. It's the moment you see that the person you trusted most has already rehearsed their lies. That night, while he slept in the guest room, I opened my laptop and started making plans. Quietly, carefully, like a woman who'd learned that silence was her sharpest weapon. The next morning, Daniel acted as though nothing had happened. He came down in his crisp blue shirt, the one I'd ironed the day before, and poured himself coffee like it was any other morning. Got a long day, he muttered, glancing at his watch. We'll talk tonight, okay? Talk. That word felt hollow, like he'd rehearsed it too many times already. I just nodded, sliding his lunchbox across the counter. Sure. When he left, I sat down at the table, the same table where I'd served thousands of breakfasts, and stared at the empty chair across from me. I realized that the man who used to sit there, the one who'd once traced my hand just to count the freckles, was gone. What remained was a stranger who smelled of another woman's perfume. That afternoon, I went for a walk. I needed air, the kind that didn't smell like lies. The park near our house was quiet, just the rustle of leaves and the distant sound of children laughing. I sat on a bench, the same one Daniel and I used to visit on Sundays when life felt simpler. I remember thinking, is this how love ends? Not with a storm, but with silence? Then I made a promise to myself. If he was truly betraying me, I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I would leave, with grace and precision. But first, I would know the full truth. That evening, when he returned home, I watched him closely. His phone was always face down now, his laughter more careful, his goodnight kisses shorter. I started noticing patterns. Messages at 11 p.m., meetings on Fridays, late nights that didn't match his usual calendar. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I followed him. It was a Wednesday. He said he had a client dinner. I waited 15 minutes after he left, then grabbed my keys and drove. The city looked different that night, sharper, louder. My heart raced so hard I could hear it over the hum of the engine. He wasn't hard to find. His routine had become predictable, dinner spots, parking habits, even his cologne trail. I spotted his car near a cozy Italian restaurant, the one we used to go to on anniversaries. The lights inside glowed warm against the night. Through the window, I saw him. And her. She was younger than me, maybe early 30s. Blonde hair, perfect smile, the kind of woman who laughs a little too loudly because she knows she's being watched. They sat close, not across from each other, but side by side. His hand brushed hers. Her head tilted toward him. For a moment, I couldn't move. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. It wasn't the sight of them together that broke me. It was realizing how natural it looked, how easily he'd replace me in the seat I once filled. I didn't go inside. I didn't confront them. I just watched long enough to understand one thing. The man I loved was gone, and no amount of pleading would bring him back. When I got home, the house felt colder. I sat in the dark living room, staring at our wedding photo on the wall, him in a navy suit, me in lace, both smiling like we knew something about forever. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Her name was Linda, calm, professional, the kind of woman who'd seen 1,000 heartbreaks and survived them all. When I told her I wanted a quiet divorce, she raised an eyebrow. No confrontation? No, I said. I don't want a scene. I want freedom. She nodded, typing on her computer. Then we'll make it simple. He won't even see it coming. In the weeks that followed, I became an actress in my own life. I smiled at dinners, asked about his work, even helped him pack for a conference, all while quietly transferring money, updating documents, and securing what was mine. He never noticed. Maybe because guilt makes people blind, or maybe because he was too wrapped up in her. But something inside me shifted. The hurt didn't vanish, but it hardened into something sharper, purpose. I started gathering small things. Receipts, text screenshots, hotel confirmations. Not for revenge. Not yet. But because part of healing is seeing the truth laid bare, stripped of excuses. Every lie, every excuse, every late night became a note in my private collection of proof. And with each piece, I felt a little stronger. Then came the final betrayal, the one that made my decision absolute. It was a Saturday morning. I was sorting laundry when I found a small receipt in his jacket pocket. A jewelry store. Not the one we'd ever shopped at together. The date? 2 weeks earlier. The message scribbled on the back? To my dearest Catherine, forever yours, D. I held that paper for a long time. It felt heavier than it should have, like a gravestone for everything we used to be. He'd bought her a bracelet. The same week he'd forgotten our anniversary. That night, when he came home, I was already packed. Not with suitcases, just emotionally. I served him dinner, smiled when he thanked me, and listened as he talked about his meeting. He had no idea that the lawyer had already filed the papers. The next morning, I placed the signed divorce documents on his desk with a note. You don't need to explain. I already know. He called my name when he found them, his voice sharp with panic. Claire, what is this? What are you doing? Ending something that already ended, I said quietly. He stepped closer, anger flashing in his eyes. You're making a mistake. I looked at him for the last time, really looked and said, So did you. Then I walked out. It should have ended there. But something inside me, that small, steady voice that used to keep the peace, whispered, he needs to understand what he destroyed. And that's when I remembered something. Our wedding binder. All those receipts, invoices, and bills I'd kept from the day we said I do. Every flower, every meal, every guest chair. I'd saved them because I thought they meant something. Now they would again. For a few days after the divorce, the silence was unbearable. Not the peaceful kind, the hollow kind that echoes in the walls and reminds you that someone used to breathe beside you. The bed felt too big, the coffee pot too full. Even the air seemed different, like the house itself knew he wasn't coming back. But underneath that ache, something new began to form, clarity. It wasn't rage. Not exactly. It was the quiet understanding that justice didn't always wear armor. Sometimes it wore pearls and a steady smile. One morning, while cleaning out a drawer, I found the old ivory binder. Our wedding binder. The cover was smudged with age, the edges bent from time, but inside, neatly tucked in page protectors, were all the receipts from that day. The venue deposit, the catering invoice, the florist's handwritten note. Each number stared back at me like a ghost of the promises we'd made. I ran my fingers over one receipt, the bill from the vineyard where we'd held our reception. I remembered how Daniel had insisted on having an open bar for everyone we love. I smiled bitterly. Everyone we love, I whispered. Interesting choice of words. Then the idea came to me, not as a flash of revenge, but as a moment of poetic justice. He'd replaced me so easily, made vows to another woman before our divorce ink had even dried, so maybe it was only fair that she learned what those vows really cost. I sat at my desk and began to work. I spent hours crafting what looked like a real invoice, Except this one wasn't just numbers. It was history, itemized with precision. Each page listed a piece of our past. Venue rental, $3,800 for the night he promised forever. Dress alterations, $640 for the gown he couldn't even look at by the end. Catering and wine, $5,200 for the meal shared with people who toasted to lies. Photography package, $2,100 for the pictures that would never mean what they used to. At the top, in neat black letters, I wrote, "Invoice for wedding expenses, reassignment to future, Mrs. Daniel Hughes." And beneath that, I signed my name, "With love and sincerity, Claire." It was cruel,
But it was also honest.
the next step was easy. I knew her name, Catherine, because of that bracelet receipt. A little online search told me where she worked. A boutique marketing firm downtown. Clean, glassy, modern, all smiles and fake warmth. I didn't plan to go inside. Instead, I slipped the envelope into a courier service with signature required delivery. The front of the envelope was addressed elegantly, in calligraphy I'd practiced on our own invitations years ago. To Catherine Miller, regarding upcoming celebration. I sealed it with a gold sticker, the same kind we'd used on our wedding thank you cards. I stood there at the counter, envelope in hand, heart steady. It felt strange, freeing, almost holy, to send something so devastating with such calm. 2 days later, the call came. Not from her, from him. "Claire, what the hell did you do?" His voice cracked through the receiver, rough, desperate. "I'm not sure what you mean," I said softly, stirring my tea. "You'll have to be specific." "Don't play games with me," he snapped. "Catherine got some kind of letter from you." He paused, almost choking on the word. "Bill? For our wedding?" I smiled unseen.
Oh, that.
"Yes, I thought since she's stepping into my old shoes, she might want to cover the cost of them." "You're unbelievable," he hissed. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" "Humiliating?" I repeated. "You mean like when I watched you feed another woman the same dessert we shared on our anniversary? Or when you told her you loved her while still married to me? That kind of humiliation." There was silence. Then a shaky exhale. "Claire, please," he said, softer now. "Don't do this." But it was already done. And for once, I didn't owe him forgiveness. That night, my phone lit up with messages, mutual friends, even his sister, all whispering variations of the same thing. "Did you really send her your wedding bill?" "Claire, that was brutal but genius." "They're a joke now. Everyone's talking about it." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was doing all the talking for me. By the end of the week, Daniel's perfect little world began to unravel. His company heard rumors. Catherine stopped showing up to work for a few days. I didn't celebrate it, not exactly, but I did feel vindicated. There was no satisfaction in their misery, only peace in knowing I'd reclaimed my dignity without losing myself. I'd walked away with silence, grace, and one golden act of poetic justice. A few evenings later, I stood by my kitchen window as the sun sank behind the trees. The air smelled like rain, the kind that cleans everything, streets, leaves, hearts. I whispered to the empty room, "We were never forever, and that's okay." Then I opened a bottle of wine, the same brand from our wedding night, poured one glass, and raised it, not to him, not to revenge, but to freedom. The fallout came faster than I expected. 3 days after Daniel's furious phone call, the gossip began spreading like wildfire through our old circle, co-workers, neighbors, friends of friends. It wasn't that I'd told anyone myself. I hadn't. But news like that has a way of slipping through cracks and echoing in hallways. By Friday, even my old yoga instructor had texted. "I heard about the wedding invoice thing. You're kind of a legend, Claire." Legend. The word made me laugh, though it carried a bittersweet edge. I hadn't wanted fame, just fairness. Still, it was satisfying in a quiet, ironic way, poetic justice whispered through 1,000 retellings. The real consequence, though, wasn't social, it was emotional. Daniel began calling again. At first he was angry, then apologetic, then desperate. Please, Claire, he said one evening, voice raw with exhaustion. Can we talk? Just once? I need you to hear me out. I was sitting by the fireplace, a mug of tea warming my hands, the soft ticking of the clock filling the silence between us. About what, Daniel? I asked. About how sorry you are, or about how much it hurts now that your choices have consequences.
He sighed. You don't understand.
Catherine's. I don't want to hear her name. I cut in gently. Not anymore. He was quiet for a moment, then murmured. She left. She couldn't handle that attention. A long silence stretched between us. I could hear the faint tremor in his breathing, the kind that comes when a man finally realizes he's alone. I closed my eyes. Then maybe you'll understand what it feels like to live with the echo of what you've broken. And for the first time since it all began, he didn't argue. The following week, I met with Linda, my lawyer, to finalize a few post-divorce details. She slid the paperwork across the table and gave me a knowing look. You've handled this with more grace than most, she said. I smiled faintly. Grace was the only thing I had left. Linda tilted her head. Word of advice? Take that grace and build something new. Don't let this story define you. Let it free you. Her words stayed with me. That night, I went home and stood in front of my closet, half empty now. The suits, the dresses, the matching scarves, all reminders of a life built around someone else's routine. I started filling donation bags. By midnight, 3 boxes were gone, his old shirts, our wedding china, the dried bouquet I'd kept on the shelf far too long. Each thing I released seemed to lift a piece of weight from my chest. Then, one morning, a message appeared in my inbox. It was from Catherine. The subject line simply read, about the bill. I hesitated before opening it. My heart didn't race. It just thudded once, heavy and calm. Claire, you didn't need to humiliate me. I didn't know about you, not until it was too late. He told me you were separated. Still, I guess I deserve it. I paid the invoice. Every cent, consider it my tuition for a lesson well learned. I read it twice. Then I laughed softly, a genuine, light-hearted laugh, the first in months. I hadn't expected her to pay it, but the fact that she did, that was a kind of closure I hadn't even dared hope for. I replied simply, thank you for settling the debt. I wish you peace and better choices next time. And then I deleted the entire thread. In the days that followed, something in me shifted again. I started sleeping through the night. The house didn't feel empty anymore, it felt mine. The quiet wasn't loneliness now, it was calm. I started walking in the mornings, the same park where I'd once sat crying on that bench. The trees were changing color, gold, red, rust. The kind of beauty that only comes from letting go. Sometimes I caught myself thinking about Daniel, not with anger but with distance, like a chapter in a book I'd already finished reading. A few weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. No name on the return address. Inside was a simple note in his handwriting.
I'm sorry.
You didn't deserve what I did. I hope you find someone who knows what forever means. For a moment, my throat tightened. Then I folded the paper neatly, placed it in a box with my other old keepsakes, and sealed it shut. Some stories didn't need revisiting. Some apologies were better left as quiet acknowledgments of the past. Months passed. I took a trip to the coast, somewhere he'd never been. The first morning there, I walked barefoot along the shoreline, the cold waves brushing against my ankles. The air was sharp, alive. As the sun rose, I whispered to myself, this is what freedom feels like. No anger, no regret, just me, the sound of the ocean, and the soft knowledge that sometimes revenge isn't about destruction, it's about reclamation. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I stopped referring to myself as divorced. I wasn't someone's ex-wife anymore. I was me. It's strange how identity creeps back in slowly, like sunlight through half-closed curtains. At first, I didn't know what to do with the silence that filled my days. No more clinking glasses at dinner, no echo of his voice calling from the hallway. Just the quiet hum of my own thoughts, and the realization that I'd been living for someone else's comfort for far too long. I started small. Every morning, I brewed coffee the way I liked it, dark, unsweetened, slightly bitter. Daniel used to say it was too strong, that it made me hard to talk to before noon. But the truth was I just liked the taste of something honest. I began writing again, too. Not about him, about life, small observations, things I noticed when I actually slowed down enough to feel them. The smell of rain on pavement. The sound of the neighbor's wind chime. The way dusk turned the kitchen walls a soft, forgiving gold. One evening, as I was jotting something down in my notebook, I realized I hadn't thought about the wedding bill in weeks. It had become a memory, not a weapon. And maybe that was the point all along. Revenge wasn't supposed to consume me. It was meant to release me. Still, the world has a way of reminding you that you're not invisible. At the grocery store one afternoon, I ran into one of Daniel's old friends, Mark. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot like a schoolboy caught in a lie. "Hey, Claire," he said awkwardly. "You look good." "Thank you," I replied, smiling politely. He cleared his throat. "You know, I never said this, but you did the right thing. The way you handled it, that was something." I raised an eyebrow. "Something good, I hope." He chuckled nervously. "Oh, definitely. People still talk about it at the office. You didn't just walk away, you walked away gracefully." That word again. Gracefully. Funny how it followed me like a second name. I nodded. "Grace isn't about being quiet, Mark. It's about knowing when not to scream." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded, as if something in him finally understood. That night, I made dinner for myself, roasted vegetables, a glass of wine, and a single candle flickering in the center of the table. There was no music, no conversation, no performance. Just peace. As I ate, I thought about the woman I had been a year ago, the one who smiled through suspicion, who kept the house running while her marriage slowly fell apart. I wanted to reach back through time and tell her, "You don't have to keep pretending everything's fine. You're allowed to walk away, even if you're the only one who understands why." A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. A man named Andrew moved into the house next door, a teacher, a widower with a quiet demeanor and a garden full of lavender. We started talking over the fence, at first about ordinary things, weather, groceries, the neighborhood. He had a calmness about him, the kind that didn't demand attention, but somehow held it anyway. One Saturday, he knocked on my door, holding a small pot of blooming lavender. "I thought your porch could use a little color," he said with a shy smile. I laughed softly. "That's kind of you," he shrugged. "Consider it a peace offering. My lawnmower probably woke you up last weekend." I invited him in for tea. It wasn't love, not the dizzy, all-consuming kind I'd once believed in. It was something gentler, the kind of warmth that grows in silence, not fire. We talked for hours, about books, about grief, about how people reinvent themselves after loss. He didn't ask about Daniel. I didn't offer. And somehow that made me trust him more. Over time, we became friends, real ones. Some evenings, we'd sit on the porch, watching the sky fade from blue to violet. He'd tell me about his late wife, how she used to sing in the mornings. I'd tell him about my garden, how the roses refused to bloom until I started talking to them like old friends. Once he said, "You seem peaceful, Claire, like someone who's survived a storm." I smiled. I didn't survive it. I walked out of it. He looked at me, eyes soft, even braver. That night, after he left, I sat by the window and watched the moonlight spill across the floor. For the first time, I didn't feel the ache of what I'd lost. I felt gratitude for what I'd learned. Because life, I realized, doesn't punish us for trusting the wrong people. It teaches us how to trust ourselves. A few months later, I took a trip to Italy, a place I'd always dreamed of visiting but never did because Daniel preferred tropical beaches. Standing in the cobbled streets of Florence, I felt like a woman reborn. The air smelled of espresso and rain, the sound of distant violins drifting through the square. I wandered without a map, letting my feet decide where I should go. Somewhere between the narrow alleys and golden sunsets, I found something I'd forgotten. I had joy. Not the fleeting kind tied to someone else's affection. The deep, quiet joy that comes from knowing you made it through. When I returned home, the lavender on my porch had doubled in size. I smiled as I watered it, realizing how perfectly symbolic it was, growth born out of care, not chaos. Sometimes I think about Daniel, not often but enough to remember the lesson. He became a chapter, not my ending, not my tragedy. Just a story I had to live through to meet the woman I was meant to become. Now, when people ask if I'd ever get married again, I tell them this. I don't believe in perfect endings, but I do believe in peaceful beginnings. Because peace, not payback, is the greatest revenge of all. And to you listening to my story right now, I'll say this. If someone ever breaks your trust, don't waste your soul trying to make them hurt like you did. Stand tall. Walk away. Reclaim your name, your voice, your quiet. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is smile, close the door, and send the bill.